here, nice and early, sitting in the dark. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. Absolute pleasure and honour to have you here. A topic near and dear to my heart, which is health tech. All right, I think we'll start with some intros. Randall, would you like to begin? Tell me a little bit about yourself and the company.
Yeah, morning everyone. My name's Randall. I lead the product at Ada Health. We are the clinical trust layer around agentic healthcare. And we are present in multiple countries across the globe. We have been deployed in health systems, payer environments, by life sciences companies for different use cases. So within the health system side of things, we help navigate patients to the appropriate care settings, which is leading to some very positive outcomes. For example, 40% reduction in emergency room visits and navigating people to the appropriate specialty care. We also have a public-facing consumer set of products, from our mobile application through to web-based deployments in the US and Germany, where we help people ultimately who don't feel right figure out what's the cause and to access the right care for them. And yeah, on the life sciences side, we work with life science companies to help them find patients across the globe, which includes rare disease patients as well.
Yeah, super. Nassim, welcome.
Morning. I'm Nassim. I'm one of the VPs at Northstone. So we're a venture fund, been around since 1996, investing pre-seed to growth across all sectors. One of the sectors is healthcare. We're in London, Amsterdam, Berlin, and also in New York. So we've been in the kind of Europe, US investing for some time now. So yeah, great to be here.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Morning. I'm Stu. I'm the CEO of Helios X. Helios X operates a portfolio of consumer healthcare brands. So we have online pharmacies such as MedExpress and specialist skincare businesses such as Dematica. We have a vertically integrated model, so we do sort of everything across operating the websites to reach customers, clinical services to sort of interact with them, and then to provide and deliver treatments where appropriate.
Fantastic. And a broad question to start that you can go deep if you wish, which is, what's the biggest challenges that you see in healthcare at the moment in the UK and also Europe? Maybe if you'd like to start down the end. Stuart?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. I think at the moment, probably one of the biggest challenges I see in healthcare, particularly I guess in the context of this conversation, is like increasing consumerization of healthcare, particularly where you're seeing, I guess, you're seeing sort of demand fundamentally outstrip traditional supply or traditional capacity. And we sort of operate across 4 or 5 different countries. So the UK, the US, Germany, Canada, all with slightly different healthcare systems and healthcare setups. But that kind of problem structurally around supply and demand imbalance tends to be pretty ubiquitous across the board. And I think trying to understand how you can create digital-first models to increase total accessibility and do that in a way which fits with customer expectations, where fundamentally we're seeing expectations higher than they've ever been in terms of almost on par with non-healthcare consumer businesses, I think is one of the main challenges which has to be grappled with at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Nassim?
Yeah. I think maybe from the venture side, I think one of the challenges that I've been seeing, and I've been trying to spend a lot of time in consumer healthcare at least, because I think you see, at least in the US, a lot of these startups are growing very, very fast with a lot of demand. One of the challenges I see on this side is there is a difference between the very scientific startups and the non-scientific companies, where it is hard to kind of get consumer adoption to really take off. One of the issues with that is we're seeing spend, called consumer spend, grow quite significantly, but that spend is repeated. So people are paying for the same thing in lots of different locations. So they're not really finding the full value that they can through one platform. And so, yeah, we're super keen to find companies that are doing that, and also being able to triage into primary care as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think from both the consumer perspective and also from, say, the health system perspective, I think trust is one of the big issues at the moment in this sort of evolving landscape of LLMs and AI and generative AI and wanting to utilize this technology to be able to solve some of the problems they've been facing for a long while. From a user perspective and from a consumer's perspective, it's, which services do I use? What's the right thing for me? How do I access the thing to solve the problem I have with my health right now? And for those who are, more preventative based, how do I keep myself healthy? And then from the health system side, LLMs are great at conversation and navigating people in terms of where the conversation is going and the context of the problem at the time. But in terms of that trust, how do you trust those LLMs are giving you sage advice and safe advice? And certainly from a health system perspective, wanting to incorporate these technologies, when you think about liability and you think about the black box nature of these technologies, trust is a very big issue that sits around this whole landscape at the moment.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? I literally published an article yesterday where was citing some research by a bunch of academics that looked into 15 different models. And they're looking at research about women where the information was not only incorrect, but it was presented as fact with a conviction, So how do you approach this as a company?
Well, given this is a regulated industry from our side, so we're a Class 2A CE marked medical device, and we're the only one with a patent European granted for this clinical trust layer, which allows agentic systems to sit within it, to ensure that what's being delivered to the user at the end is trusted information, that it sits within a system that's been built around a quality management system that has an external notified body who's also cross-checked everything that we do, and it's all above board. So I think ultimately when it comes to the decision making, knowing that things have been through sort of medical device certification is a good first step. And certainly, to your point, if the studies that go around that, the supporting evidence, and just the whole process of delivering medical devices instantly elevates it above and beyond anything that hasn't gone through that process but sounds convincing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. And Stuart, if my data is correct, you've treated over 4 million patients.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Right.
That's huge impact. Where can companies like HelioX have the most impact? And do you see yourself as augmenting or complementing traditional health providers, or are you disrupting them? Where does it kind of work?
Yeah, it's a great question. It probably goes back to the fundamental challenge that I just mentioned, right? But pretty much wherever we look globally, we see an imbalance of supply and demand, or at least kind of demand growing faster than supply in pretty much every country at the moment. And I think that just sort of creates opportunities fundamentally for consumer health companies like HelioX, like many other companies out there as well, to increase that total demand, often sitting alongside traditional providers as well. So I don't think this is necessarily about disrupting the providers. I think there is an opportunity to potentially improve convenience, to use digital-first solutions to achieve sort of better outcomes for customers in certain settings. And that tends to be in the spaces or the conditions which are slightly more sort of lifestyle-led, slightly more on the consumer end of the spectrum, probably slightly lower acuity, perhaps slightly earlier in the preventative journey as well. So intervening slightly earlier to actually stop patients getting to the point where they do need sort of acute care or an immediate intervention. And I think that's certainly what we've seen in sort of categories around weight management, skin care, men's and women's health, et cetera, that sort of opportunity to engage earlier with a more sort of convenient solution, and also provide, I guess, a sort of continuous care that you don't often get to achieve perhaps with a more episodic nature of traditional models. So the fact that you can be there in someone's pocket, for want of a better phrase, or in their bag or on the side, etc., tends to create more of an opportunity to improve adherence and ultimately achieve superior outcomes for customers. And that's some of the stuff we see in our data. Probably worth saying as well that I think it's incredibly important that all consumer health models, certainly if you're sort of interacting in a more holistic system, do so in a way which is complementary with the existing providers. So when we operate in the UK at the moment, every single customer which we treat ensures that we sort of have interaction with their primary care provider. We're integrated with summary care record systems, et cetera, in the UK to ensure you can have a holistic view of that person's health and provide the right recommendations and interventions. And I think that kind of joined up nature is going to be increasingly important as you see patients and customers continue to use different solutions, and making sure that you can sort of bring together a complete picture of who they are to provide the best possible.
I'm curious though, I mean, I know that a lot of us are very digital first in our lives, but the healthcare providers we use aren't always. I know in Berlin, for example, if someone counsels, if the clinic is closed, they will put a physical sign on the door. That's about as digital as they get. So how do you augment and get those providers on board, particularly when you're dealing with things like long procurement cycles, their lack of interoperability in some of their own tech and so forth?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, and it's one of the things we probably grapple quite a lot with. I think we've spent a long time over the last few years, particularly in the UK, trying to work closely with the NHS to ensure we have the right access to systems and the right engagement. I think it's also about ensuring that the right provider team that you have internally often can kind of cross-pollinate and have relationships in different systems as well. But it's certainly not something we've found a sort of silver bullet for as of yet.
Yeah, totally. And Naseem, I mean, this is such a fast-moving area with so many touch points of impact. How do you approach this as an investor?
I think, so I've been looking at this space, or really trying to make an investment in this space for a year. And by this space, I'm more focused on the preventative health side. As we've kind of met a few companies and built out different thesis areas, for me, the most important factor, and I'm looking for, is actual behavior change that's sustained. I think we see a lot of kind of spikes in terms of behavior change or temporary things, but actually having proper long-term behavior change should lead to really good business metrics too, like good retention and being able to kind of expand into doing other things, at least from the preventative side. There are a lot of great companies out there that are building very specific things, like you might go and get a scan, you might go and do a blood test, you might be able to kind of open up access to this, but sustained change and repeated over time is still something that I think people are still grappling with and trying to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Randall, I mean, let me check my notes. You've executed over 25 million assessments.
Yeah, I think it's over 50 million.
Sorry,
yeah,
50 million.
Yeah,
I will repeat that.
That's fine.
So tell me about your users and what are they using you for?
So one of the common use cases is you're not feeling well. You may be displaying some sort of symptoms, for example. And traditionally, previously, people would go to Dr. Google and, you'd get this whole bunch of information. And actually, if you go into an LLM now and do the same thing, because I do, being our product lead, I have to every now and then check the competitor landscape, and you still get a whole barge of information. So what we do, which is differentiated, is, if somebody explains to us in their own language what the ailment is, what's causing the issue in terms of the symptoms or whatever's not feeling right, maybe they're a bit hot today, or maybe their leg aches, or they've, whatever it is, they can explain that to us. We resolve it down to our own internal clinical library of sort of symptoms, lifestyle factors, risk factors, that sort of thing. And then we ultimately help them understand what the most likely cause would be through a very handheld experience with the user. So we can then ask them qualifying questions, and our AI behind the scenes starts to ask a few questions back to try and qualify, well, maybe if it's this condition, let's ask a few more following questions. Very much in the same way, in the way that a doctor thinks. They look at you, they ask questions, they do observations, and then the most probable reason for the ailment comes up at the top, and we navigate them to appropriate care settings for them. So from a consumer side of things, if somebody would prefer telehealth, for example, then we can offer that as an option, or they want to find a clinician that's near to where they are. But then within those more health system settings, it's about driving, patient safely and appropriately to lower acuity care where it makes sense, or if they need to see a specialist because they might have, Hashimoto's or something like that, navigating them to the appropriate specialist who can deal with and diagnose and treat that condition. Yeah, absolutely. And Naseem, I think when we were doing our prep call, you said to me that you're yet to invest in a consumer health tech at the moment. Do you want to maybe walk us through a little bit about why that is and what you're looking for?
Historically, in the last few years as a fund, we've invested a lot in consumer health,
Yeah.
mostly on the mental health side in the US, companies like Spring Health, or in Europe, we've done a few things on the scribing side, like Tandem and others. But in terms of pure play consumer preventative health, so these types of companies are in the US equivalent of like Function Health or Superpower, those types of businesses, at least in Europe. I think one of the things that I've struggled with is that retention or that kind of evidence of sustained behavior change. And then the second thing is, kind of goes to your point on trust, has been around how do you actually hyper-personalize whatever your solution is to a level that doesn't give you a generic, you're kind of good right now, or this is pretty good for your age group or your gender. It kind of has to go a bit more than that and be able to assess the data points across multiple factors and multiple variables, both age, but also how it links into certain other issues you've had in the past. And today, I think on the generalist, let's do a blood test, here's what your results are, here's how you fix it, it's still too general and it's still hard to trust. And so one of the things that I'm really looking for is the hyper-personalization element, but then also the sustained behavior change. And so we're seeing kind of sprouts of that, but I would, I'm spending a lot of time to try and see if there's more, but yeah.
Sounds like a journey. Yeah, absolutely. I guess particularly when you're looking at the quantified health notion where, you've got this intersection of data driving outcomes and behavioural change, like you mentioned. Stuart, I'm feeling old today because I discovered, doing a bit of research, Gen Alpha is the first generation to grow up entirely with AI in healthcare. And the next one, Gen Beta, will never know anything else. What does this mean for adoption and innovation?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a fundamental shift in the question, right? So if I think about sort of what we're doing at the moment, we're trying to incorporate AI in ways which can essentially act as a sort of force multiplier for our prescribers, our internal teams, whilst also understanding how it might improve the sort of patient experience. And I think that question is going to shift from sort of like, should we do this or how do we do it, to which AI solutions do we use? And on the patient side, I imagine it will shift to which do I trust and why do I trust and how do I choose to interact with them. So I think it's going to see a fundamental up-leveling of the overall experience. I imagine you're going to see increased personalization, an evolved model towards sort of like continuous care and fundamentally continue to raise the bar around sort of consumer expectations and that sort of seamless experience. And I think it's going to create huge opportunities fundamentally. So I imagine you'll see entirely new sort of business models and entirely new businesses emerge, but I think it's going to come with some risk as well. So as those generations fundamentally sort of expect it to be part of a service and adopt it almost naturally, I think there'll still be generations out there, because you're going to have these multiple generations existing at the same time who will potentially reject brands or reject solutions just as quickly if it's not done well. So I think huge opportunity, but also potential challenges and risks if it's not executed effectively. And then I think the regulation side is going to have a massive part of it, as well, as we heard just a second ago, in terms of we're not doing this in a sort of pure D2C sector. It's obviously in regulated healthcare, and therefore ensuring that you do that with like preservation around clinical excellence and clinical governance is going to be fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we've got a minute and a half-ish. Final question for everybody, and I might start with you, Randall. If you could give one bit of advice to medtech or health tech entrepreneurs in the audience, what would it be? Maybe they're starting today.
One bit of advice would be, of course, focus on solving the immediate problem you're trying to fix, and of course understanding the economics around that. But then also start to think outside of your bubble in terms of the wider ecosystem, because sometimes the value that you think you're delivering on day one and that you're focused on is the value. Actually, there are many ways in which other people would look at your company or your solution and think, oh, maybe that could solve a problem that I'm facing, which is something you would never have considered previously. So the more you can build situational awareness around the wider industry and the aspects that you maybe hadn't considered from day one and how they could benefit from your solution and the things that it generates, whether that's data, whether that's the actual underlying operational processes that you're fixing, even your internal operating system sometimes other people are interested in. So always think, you know, outside of the specific bubble that you're focusing on.
Yassine, go.
For me, it would just be try and focus on something that is as frictionless as possible,
Yeah.
increasingly personalized, and focuses on the so what.
Fantastic.
It's probably very similar advice, and it's not different to other sectors, but I've never seen customer expectations evolve quite as fast as they are in the sector at the moment. So I think really obsessing about customers and understanding what problem you're solving for them is probably more important than it's ever been.
Great last words. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Very sadly, we're out of time. Thank you for being with us to listen to the panel.
Thank you.